My name's Julie Choi, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Cerebras Systems. We represent the disruptor, the ultimate disruptor. We are a 10-year-old company, privately owned, and we've been developing the world's fastest and most powerful AI chip. So we represent the disruptor, right? And today we're going to talk about the transformative power of AI, but more importantly, for disruptors and incumbents to become generational companies, we need to interact with the law. And the law needs to guide us, and we also need to all kind of adapt, both as companies, whether we are disruptors or incumbents, or the legal systems that support us. And so today we're going to talk about that. And I'd like to introduce again Megan. So Megan Jones is from Hausfeld, which is a pioneering firm in the field of antitrust. And Megan has been a fierce defender of competition, obtaining over $3 billion in court for her clients. And then we have Belinda Lee, counsel at Latham & Watkins. And Belinda is one of the top advisors to corporate America, leading antitrust, IP, and other types of complex cases. So let's get started. Megan, how do you think the courts will determine who is responsible if things go wrong?
So this is a new product fit in an old system of laws. And so what the courts are looking for is like, what else is this like when AI causes harm and it's coming to their courtrooms? And so far, it's been product liability. And so we all know this as lawyers. If you make an artificial hip and you put it in a body and it disintegrates in a year, that's not a good thing for society. And so we incentivize in the law, the manufacturer of that hip is going to be held responsible. They're going to have to pay for the harm caused by that. And we do that as a society because we want the manufacturer of the hip to not sell hips made out of dust. We want them, before that product hits the market, to test and make sure and do some longevity studies. And so what we're seeing right now is AI is being treated like products. And so right now, initially, manufacturers of AI are treated like manufacturers of products. So when an AI product allegedly caused harm to a teen, and that was brought into the courts, the court has initially held, like I just said, it's a product. That they did not have available to them the defense of free speech, which some search engines do. It was treated like this is a product that caused harm, and could you have foreseen that this product caused harm to this teen? In another case, an AI system in a car allegedly caused a crash. And what they did there was they looked at the case and they looked at the facts and they said, you misrepresented what this AI could do in this car. Mm-hmm. And there was a verdict for the person who died in the crash for hundreds of millions of dollars, over $200 million. What's interesting is some people are not being patient. And they are taking this out of the courtroom where we have a process and we will use the law that's we've had for decades, and they're taking it to the state house. And so in at least 10 state houses right now, there is legislation about AI. So that's just going to be imposed on top of everything I just told you about, product liability. So things like if AI is analyzing you on a Zoom and no one told you about it. Things like deep fakes and labeling that. And because this area is so new, Julie, mm-hmm. Some people are getting impatient and they're pushing it through legislation.
Amazing. That's very fascinating. So in this time of uncertainty, and it's still very early days for AI, although I've worked in this space for a decade, I really do feel like this is kind of a new chapter, the last few years. So in this time of uncertainty, when things are they can and will go wrong, Belinda, what can companies do to protect themselves in the case that, something happens?
Yeah, so first off, no one wants to see that happen, right? And so our jobs as lawyers is to help companies plan for that, plan for those contingencies, right? And that's why you can, for example, if you are a company who's licensing an AI system to a hospital, right? Think about how you can define liability and allocate responsibility for when things go bad, right? So if you are licensing an AI system to a software, decide and negotiate in your licensing agreement who's going to be responsible for when the AI system goes rogue, right? When it hallucinates, who's responsible for that? Are you responsible for it? Is the hospital responsible for it? Is it a shared responsibility? That's the kind of thing that you need to be thinking about in advance as you are contracting with your customers. As a AI provider, though, you're not always going to be able to contract with everyone in advance, right? So if, for example, you are that system provider who is licensing to hospitals, you're not going to be able to negotiate with every single hospital patient, right? So what you want to do then is think about how can you still protect yourself going forward with an indemnification provision, for example. Negotiate with the hospital about who is responsible when something goes wrong and it affects one of their patients. Maybe negotiate a use restriction that sets how the hospital can responsibly use your system, right? And if they don't use it the way they are supposed to use it, then they're responsible and not you. If you think about it from the other side, right, if you are the company that's licensing the AI system, think about also what, first of all, do your diligence on the system that you're licensing, right? Like, where's the data coming from that they are training their system on? Is it copyrighted? Because that's something that could come back to haunt you if you're using a system that is based and trained on AI copyrighted content. And then make sure you're also, as you're negotiating, setting strict terms about who owns your data. Do you own your data or do they own your data? And who owns the output that comes from your data? These are all things that you need to be thinking about in advance.
Yeah, that reminds me, from the game of basketball, which I know Megan and I love, the best offense is the best defense. So I love that. Thank you so much. Now we're going to switch gears and a quick question on a hot topic. The hot topic is bias. Megan, how do you look at bias in AI?
So I think you can look at it in two ways. One is traditional bias, which is against race, gender, sexual orientation, and think about, are your systems inadvertently or overtly impacting that in a way that could come back to have legal ramifications. And so a clear way to do that is like testing and having your eyes open about what's happening. But one thing that it really brought to mind when Belinda was talking was your business relationships are going to be really important. And so in the law, there's a concept called agency. And let's say you use a screener AI for your employment job. And so you're going to use this AI to kind of get you the best resumes from the pile. And unbeknownst to you, that screener AI discriminates. And there's a case winding its way through the courts right now where they screened out everyone over 40. And that, some of that affects some of us more than others. But, right now, the court has held that because the employer used the software as its agent to find its applicants, the employer, who had nothing to do with this vendor, is now being sued, right? And so I think that as you, keep your head on a swivel, look up court and down court if we're going to keep the basketball metaphor going. But you need to really be thinking about, like, who are you using and what are they doing? Because they can pull you in. You're just trying to get less HR hours. You're just trying to get the best person. And so, like, keeping an eye on that vendor and understanding wholly what they do, using Belinda's good advice about indemnification, who's going to be responsible for that. But you have to know that to get that, right? And that's new because we have this new thing. But there's also, this is what I feel most passionate about, is bias in terms of competition. The law is old stories, and there are hundreds of old stories of market disruptors. New kid on the block that came in with the thing that disrupted the market. And
Here, new thing that's disrupting the market.
yes.
Thank you.
And you're going to have the old guard saying, get out of here, or we're going to keep doing things the way we've always done them. And they're not going to make space for you in that market. And so to me, I think that bias is something that the courts are going to have to wrestle with. Because as you come on the block and you say, you know what, I can do that better, faster.
Amen.
And with less resources, there you might run into a market that says we're going to deploy tools against you to keep you out. And so as technologies emerge, I want you to think about how will you find your customers and how will they find you. And that's where we can come in and make sure that the market isn't self-preferencing or eking you out with contracts that lock up your customers for 5 years and there's no space for you. And so to me, it's really important to think of bias in the marketplace of ideas.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. So we have spent half our time now talking about some of the liabilities and the risks that we face in this new era. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about opportunity, okay? So Belinda, what are some ways, you work with some of the largest corporations in the world. We hope to become one of them someday soon. And what are some of the opportunities that AI is bringing to us?
Yeah. So first of all, I always say that the law is a really powerful monetization tool, right? Obviously, intellectual property law is the most obvious one, right? So make sure as a company that you are patenting your technology and that you are enforcing your rights. You also want to think about trade secret protection. One of the panels yesterday, one of the speakers was talking about the AI talent wars and how it's great that the nerds are finally getting their payday. And it's fantastic to see that kind of mobility, labor mobility, but you want to make sure that that does not come at the expense of your trade secrets, right? You don't want your trade secrets, your hard-earned trade secrets walking out the door with your employees. So it's really important to make sure that you're protecting that. And then also, as Megan was saying, right, think about the laws as a way to even the playing field, right? If you are a company you're finding that somebody is locking up in exclusive contracts all the inputs that you need to develop a viable business, then make use of the antitrust laws. I do feel like I have to say, though, as the defense lawyer on this panel, though, that the antitrust laws need to find some kind of balance, right? It's important for there to be competition, right? So you want to force competition and interoperability, and you want to make sure that people can compete on every platform. But it's also important that there's a balance between forcing interoperability and giving companies the space and protection to make the difficult design decisions they need to make sure that they are prioritizing safety, security, data privacy, right? You need to make sure that companies are still able to do that, even though someone else might disagree with that design decision and think that would help them as a company. So it's really important to make sure that we are still giving companies the space to make those decisions. It's also important that we protect companies. Disruptors today are going to be the big corporates of tomorrow. And that idea, the fact that you can be a small disruptor today and become a big success, that's the engine that drives innovation. And so we do need to make sure that our antitrust laws preserve that ability to reward first movers and reward companies who take those risks and will invest and continue to invest.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really about putting the practices in place that preserve a very healthy ecosystem.
Exactly.
Of incumbents as well as disruptors. We just need everybody to be able to play, right? So really appreciate that perspective. Now we're going to switch gears into kind of the future. I always like to get experts' opinions on what they see in the next 5 years, maybe 10 years. Megan, what kind of cases do you think you'll be taking in the next 5 years?
So, I think that I'm going to get a lot of calls of I can't get to my market. I don't know how. I can't foresee it yet. This new technology is going to take us in different ways, and what the Google it was of your AI is going to be. And so I think that the litigation is going to occur to protect competition in some fashion. And so we will find out how that bubbles up, whether it's self-preferencing or fill in the blank. It's coming attractions, we'll see. But I think it's vital that innovation be allowed to thrive. And so I think that it not get snuffed out by the old ways or the old guard who are threatened by the way that you're disrupting the market. And I like the story that I tell is like when Tesla first started selling cars, they didn't want to have stores. They didn't want to have parking lots. They wanted to have a computer. And car manufacturing trade associations, some of them, said you have to, in state regulation, said you actually have to have a store in order to sell cars in our state. And that was, Tesla was disrupting that market. They didn't want to own real estate. And so they brought that and had to litigate in order to disrupt that market and say, actually, we want to be in a mall. We want to be online.
Like at Stanford Shopping Center.
I mean, we've all seen it. We live here, and so that's just for instance of I think a market disruptor coming in and saying we want to change the way the business is, and then they had to sue about it. The other thing I think is that I'll see as AI comes out into every aspect of our life, and it's where we book travel and buy shoes and everything else that we can think of. I think that I'll see litigation about pricing, and so making sure there's a whole body of law that says you should have competition around pricing. You should be able to get it from here at $7 a pound and here at $6 a pound, and they can compete for your business and you pay $6.50. That's good for you. And so I think that there will be a lot of litigation as AI bubbles up and impacts. It not only impacts us, like what we pay for eggs and coffee and airlines, but it affects Julie, who's buying something to make that chip of hers. And so corporations need to make sure that your material inputs are subject to competition as well.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, Belinda, same question for you. What kind of cases do you think you're going to take in the next 5 years?
So the opposite of Megan. But I do believe there will be a lot of anti-monopoly lawsuits out there, whether from incredible adversaries like Megan and her firm or the DOJ, FTC, more and more also, and frankly, in some ways, regulators outside of the US are even more aggressive in Europe, in the UK, in Asia. And so I think you are going to see that, and it's difficult for companies, cross-border companies who sell products, license products in all of these different jurisdictions where you have a patchwork of regulations. You almost have a race to the bottom in some ways. And so it's something that I think companies really need to be thinking about in terms of as they develop their products, not only how are they developing it, but where are they going to be deploying it and where are their customers going to be deploying it. And then the other type of case that I really see coming is just cybersecurity, right? AI systems are, they process massive amounts of data, and so that makes them attractive targets, right, for data breaches. But then I think you're also going to see hijacking of AI systems, right? And so then one of the panelists yesterday, I heard they were talking about how agentic systems right now, they don't talk to each other, right? But the goal is for them to one day be able to interoperate with each other. But the more interoperability you have like that, the higher risk you have for cybersecurity risk. And so I really think that that's coming down the pike.
Thank you.
I think we have a question.
Oh, sure.
Yay.
There's another opportunity. I work as an academic vice provost. Academic integrity issues are on the rise. And there are also lots of issues in higher education also around this.
Yeah.
What are permissible thresholds in AI use in student work? And I believe I want to say, was it Northeastern that was sued? I don't want to misname the university that was involved in this lawsuit, but one of the students sued the professor because the professor was utilizing AI,
Right.
and they felt, well, why am I paying tuition?
Right.
Oh my
So
gosh.
there's huge issues also in higher education around this that I think
Yeah.
you know, obviously have a legal aspect to it.
I mean, it's kind of like cell phones in schools, you know, and it took us a long time. We had like 10 years of wild, wild west and of bring your cell phone to school, and it was beeping all day, and the teachers were losing their minds. And now, you know, I know in Palo Alto at least, we have it where you dock your phone at the beginning of every class and you pick it up at the end. And so like sensible policy, you know, and in middle school, it's in your locker for the entire day. And so what my answer to your question is I think it's going to have to start in your neighborhood, in your backyard, with sensible regulation, little r, about what's allowed at your school, like almost honor code, right? But I foresee the problem for sure.
All right, so we're going to take 2 more questions here. I mean, we'll do questions. We still have around 5.5 minutes here, but I want to get your takes. One piece of advice. This is very expensive advice, so we should hear it. Let me tell you.
No bills.
Yes, no bills today. But if there's one piece of advice that you would like to give to, you know, the room, to potential disruptors, to potential incumbents, Megan, why don't you give yours?
I'm going to say be proactive about the market in which you compete. And I know, I think it's almost as important as the product or service you make. Knowing where your customers are coming from, knowing, you know, where you're competing. I know this is not what you want to hear. In that you're like, I already have a job. My job is my job, and I have to go do this other job. But the answer is yes. I think you need to be proactively monitoring where your customers are coming from, where your product is ideally positioned, and make sure that you have access to your customers. You know, we can help spot it early. If you're like, all of a sudden I had you know, and I do this for some of my clients. All of a sudden, we know a big player in the market is encroaching on their customers, and we're monitoring it, and we're tracking it, and we're advising their board, and we're managing expectations so there's not an unpleasant surprise in 18 months, and everyone is informed on the same decision. And so legal advice does not have to be big and expensive and long. It can be a well-timed letter. It can be, you know, advisory, which is, I think you should do this. And this one, you know, we know this one company right now is being bullied by the big player on the block and is slowly turning off the oxygen. And so what we've done a stealth data gathering. And so we're in all their markets gathering the information. And so that when we do, you know, we'll have a case when we go to court and say that we have proof. And so I think in addition to being the amazing scientists and business people and academics that you all are, monitor the market in which you're in so that you see it coming, and we can help even the playing field. You just have to ask.
Thank you. Belinda?
Yeah, so I guess I would say that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So going in as you are developing your systems, make sure that you've got legal as part of your development team, right? Like they can advise you on what to do and how to develop your system. So much of AI, if not developed properly, could be a black box, right? And so you need your system to be transparent in terms of how it's working, and to the extent you've got different agents interacting with each other, who's doing what? Because one day when you get hauled into court, you want to be able to prove that's not what I did. It could have been some other agent that my system interoperates with, but that's not what I did. And it's about being able to trace that, trace your system and have accountability for your system. And I think that will help you down the line.
Amazing. So proactive and prevention.
Yep.
Amazing. All right. Well, that concludes our, you know, planned conversation. Now we can open up for a few questions. Maybe 3. One in the back.
Oh, microphone?
Oh, we have a mic right here. We'll get to you next. Yes, it does. Yes, go ahead, please.
Is it on? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to switch the direction a little bit because I came into this. I have a son who's a sophomore in college up here. He can argue anything. He can remember everything.
Yeah.
So I've always thought he's a lawyer in the making. But thinking about AI, it's like, wow, there are going to be less lawyers. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to come to this thing and hear about what you think about the future of law for lawyers. And do you think there's going to be more Like I walked in thinking there's going to be less, and now I'm going to walk out thinking there might actually be more. I'd love to hear from you, like the advice you would give him and what you think about the future for lawyers. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think there will always be lawyers. And there will, for example, what Megan and I do, we go to court, right? Like that you will always need a human to do that, right? And so there will always be lawyer jobs. I think they will change, though. I work at a big firm where when I was a junior associate, I did a lot of, I learned by doing document review, where I was literally sitting, going through bankers' boxes, flipping through documents, right? And that's going to change. That has changed already, because there's so much now. Discovery has become electronic, right? And the AI is going to help cut down the number of hours that people need to do page turning, right? AI will help you understand the documents in a way that we couldn't before. But that just, I think in many ways, makes our job more exciting and interesting, because we're not doing the mind-numbing page turning stuff. You're jumping straight to the substance, right? Which is the fun part.
Yeah.